Hey, how are you? Think I'm about 1 minute late. Sorry about that. Hang on just for a second. We're going to let some other people get notified that the stream has begun. I am getting tidy, ready to go. Hey, how are you? People are starting to pay attention. Good. Welcome to the stream. We will start having fun and talking. Hello. Let's see. Am I looking? Leave studio, open screen cam, stop cam, mic mute. Oh, we've got it. Okay. My technical advisor slash better half, Cheryl, tells me that we are now live and working. Hi, I hope you're well. Let's spend a few minutes having some fun, thinking about something that maybe is worth our time. I'm great. I hear from you all the time. Thank you. I don't think you'll ever fully understand exactly how much I love what I do and how grateful I am. I'm connected to a few million people who want to say hello and ask questions and things like that. And I love it. Don't ever stop. So here's how I am. Caffeinated, healthy, focused, getting things done. I've been very lucky. I haven't got a hint of a coronavirus yet, nor has my wife, children, anybody I know. So far, I'm just feeling very grateful. I don't know how else to say that. And in fact, I should tell you this. Let me just start off script. One of my favorite topics that I say when I'm on stage. I'm going to go off script. Here we go. People ask me all the time about my political views. I never talk about politics in any public forum. Rarely do I even do it interpersonally because it's, it can become a personal thing for people and it can cause feathers to be ruffled. I'm going to break that rule and say something that needs to be said. We live in extraordinary times. So here it is. I'm reading the news just like the rest of you. I'm watching this unfold for better or for worse across the globe. And here's my politics. You ready? As pertains to this epidemic, you really should listen to all the healthcare providers, the doctors, the nurses, and the experts, the scientists, far more than politicians or anyone else. There's my politics. You want us to get through this as quickly as possible. Politicians, by the way, there's tons of good people in politics. I fully recognize that. But if you're smart, you'll do what I'm doing, and you will listen to the experts, the doctors, scientists, far more than anyone else. There's my politics. Now, let's talk about business. I'm working on a lot of things these days. I am, for those of you who love Show Your Ink, I can tell you, I'm about 14 stories into what you might think of as a sequel. It's called Live Hard, leadership-related my life and the experiences of people I know. It's really focused this time on taking smart risks, maximizing how you live this life, getting things done, even when it's hard, even when people don't support you, creativity, change, innovation, all of those topics. Very excited. I got a few more stories. I hope to hit 20 of them, just like last time before I publish late this year, maybe early next year, something of that nature. Very excited. All kinds of digital things going on too that I won't bother you with. I also will tell you in regards to digital life that what you're looking at right now won't last, hopefully, for too much longer. In the very near future, I hope to be building a home office, home studio that does a lot of things I'm not doing right now. This is working very well. I'm grateful for it. But we can all imagine looking at me without that glare in my glasses. So for what it's worth in the near future, hopefully I'll have a new studio for you to pay attention to. Okay, today's topic, one of my favorites, and I'd like to tell you what the topic is and why it's one of my favorites before I dive in for just a little while. The topic is sacred cows. Now, apologies to all my Hindu friends, apologies to my vegetarian and vegan friends. I got to tell you, this is not about food, even though it sounds that way to many ears. No apologies here, but I hope I'm not too offensive. Sacred cows make great barbecue. That's a phrase I came up with years ago, and it just kind of rang true and stuck with a lot of people. Every few years I have to revisit that and talk about it. And here's why it's interesting to me. Before I morphed kind of unexpectedly into a globally known leadership generalist, I talk about all the 5 or 10 major slices of leadership all the time, right? Self-improvement, motivation, communication, all these things that I love. Before I made that small pivot, I fell in love first with studying creativity and innovation. And when I chose a place to go get a PhD, which was Texas A&M University, a place I still feel quite fond about, I chose it because they had professors studying what I really wanted to study, which was employee creativity. Why do people try? Why do they speak up? Why do they do above and beyond things to make us different and better, and not just, stewards of the status quo? I fell in love with that. And there's a variety of topics in that world that I discovered as I became a subject matter expert in that area. For example, we know that people perceive all kinds of risks at work. There's the risk that people are going to listen to them when they show up with ideas. The risk that their ideas are tried and fail. The risk that I'm going to create work by running my mouth too much, both for me and others. Many risks people perceive when they think about engaging their work and their teammates more creatively. Well, one of those topics stuck with me, maybe more than all the rest, and it's the sacred cows issue. It's this idea. We go to work every day. We talk to our family every day. We see people in our community and our social circles every day. And we do a bunch of things. We don't always act thoughtfully about them. We just tend to engage. Now, some percentage of the things that we do in these different contexts make a whole lot of sense. Some of them make no sense at all. Sacred cows are everywhere. They are things that we do that used to maybe be productive. They're no longer productive. They're not terribly logically defensible, and yet they're still there. I like to talk about that topic, maybe give some examples at different levels, from the org to the team to the individual, and give you a couple examples I've been writing about, thinking about, that maybe will show up in a book I just mentioned very soon. I think you all know this concept. The real question, I'm going to end by reminding you of this fact. The real question is, what kind of professional do you want to be? What kind of professional do you want to be? Do you want to be a steward of the status quo, which we all need, and that is admirable, no doubt about it. But I think it's not enough and it's a little safe. Or do you want to be something more? Well, if you do, you have to face those risks I just talked about, and you will have to find and slay a few of those sacred cows and make some barbecue. So let's do this. Let's think about this. Think about your life. I know you have examples that you've seen where we're doing something. Doesn't make sense. Why are we doing it? We're doing it because, well, we've always done it that way. We're doing it because, I don't want to try and create work for myself. It's already functioning kind of, so we're going to leave that thing alone, that practice, that process, we're going to leave that alone. Or, you know what, there's a couple chiefs, important people we care about and respect, and they get the way it's done, so nobody says a word. It's like that old that phrase, right? The dead body in the room that we all just kind of ignore, step over, and imagine it's not there, when in fact we all know it's there every day, and no one says a word. That's a sacred cow. You think of examples in your life or in your organizational life. I think there are many. Let me share just a couple. One of my favorites from back in the day was iTunes. Now, iTunes, as you well know, has been largely overcome or supplanted by streaming services, which I enjoy as well. But once upon a time, not too many years ago, people bought and sold records, CDs, etc. at retail. It's a physical thing that we went and got. And then the digital revolution finally happened, and people started trying to figure out how we're going to do that. You might remember Napster and other weird experiments that took place. But eventually, a little company that had, nothing to do with music, called Apple, led by a guy who was fascinating and sometimes problematic, named Steve Jobs. He was interesting, to say the least. And he said, well, I can imagine a better way to do it. And more impressively than that idea, he found a way to get an industry to change. The sacred cow was that I sell as an artist, and I still feel weird about this, because artists got benefit from this, and sometimes they weren't completely treated properly. A lot of people believe that. I think there's something to that. So there's clear benefits, there's clear challenges, but nonetheless, the model from a consumer perspective had huge appeal. Artists used to sell a complete work. Now they could start selling just songs. That sounds so common sense to you and me. But the truth is, at the time, man, that was a sacred cow. That business model, which is what we're talking about, that business model was the way we do it. And then this new model came along and revolutionized how we think about creating, distributing, selling, Music. That's an amazing example of a sacred cow that got burned for sure, got burned and got burned hard. There are many. Think about the org level examples where you work. Is there a certain practice, a policy, a rule that doesn't make sense, but it's been on the books? People still do it. We even kind of talk to ourselves, maybe do a good colleague or two on occasion about why are we doing this. That's a sacred cow. The question is, for you trying to be an innovator, can you identify one or two that matter, that if you were to deal with them, that you would help the group or the org move forward significantly? So let me just tell you another little nugget. And this is a foreshadowing of a TEDx talk I hope to be giving in the fall at Texas A&M. Listen, most people say they love creativity and innovation. They say creativity is the cornerstone of all we do. When they put something on the website, the shareholder letters, or any place where we're trying to say, hey, here's who we are, creativity and innovation are often central to what we say or what we write about what we do. And I have to tell you, here's the truth. Ready? Most people who are saying that they love creativity, innovation, change are full of it. The typical manager, and I love managers, they're my audience more than almost anything else, they're full of it. Because when people actually step up and try with words or actions, there might be a comment about, why don't we try this? Have we tried this? You know, we should think about, or actually tweaking an actual process, or spending time, maybe even money and resources on a product prototype. Who knows what it might be? There's many examples. But the point is, the first reaction and the first managerial reaction to people trying these things is not often warm, fuzzy, and helpful. No, the very same people inside the companies that say, we love innovation, we love creativity, come off negative, come off overly evaluative, do not sound supportive, and without even trying, very often shut down creative thought. Make people who are trying to speak up, trying to really affect change, want to just pull back, become a little more risk averse, because you know what? Who wants to volunteer for being ripped and evaluated when you're just trying to do something good for all of us? That happens all the time. So I'm going to be honest about it and tell you that if you're going to be among the brave few in work life, in life, who are going to tackle a few sacred cows, sometimes if you're successful, man, you're going to be heralded and applauded like nobody's business. You will. Yeah, people are going to say, man, you know what? I always believed in him. Oh, I always thought when she came up with that idea that she was on something. Yeah, right. The truth is, a few winners in the change game are eventually put on a pedestal and told, hey, congratulations, you are the best of us, who represent our values, etc. But the truth is that it takes this many people trying this many things before one or two of them work out. That is the nature of creativity and innovation in a real progressive, successful organization, of which there are many. I've been associated with a few, I'm proud to say. Shout out to Ernst & Young and LinkedIn and many others. The truth is, you've got to embrace that. That's what a learning culture is. It's about understanding that many things will be tried and discussed, and they will move us forward a little, but ultimately they won't add value, but they will teach us something about doing our next step, and a few more steps in, man, that's when we actually have something special. So back to a little more focused conversation here. What is the sacred cow or two that you can go identify and start talking about? Many exist, like the iTunes example, at the org level. They also exist at the individual level. I'll give you a couple from my life that were big to me at the time and let you start thinking about where maybe there's examples in your own life. I remember back in the day in the consulting biz where I spent only a few years before going to the ivory tower. I remember people talking about how long you absolutely had to stay at one of those big box consulting firms, you know, Ernst & Young and Anderson, or what is now Accenture, et cetera, Price Waterhouse, Deloitte, all those, before it's safe to leave, such that you can have that brand with you forever. And there was an answer. And the answer was always 2 years. If you do it for 2 years, it's kind of like an MBA, people would say. Which I don't agree with, but they would say that, and then you could go into the market if you want to, and there was some value associated with that brand, and you could leverage it. But was it really 2 years? I don't think so. Actually, I think the answer was closer to 4 or 5, but nobody really tested that. But it was a sacred cow. Nobody talked about it. It was a sacred cow. 2 years and out. I'm talking about large percentages of people in that industry that believed in that and followed that, even though I don't think it was the smartest decision to make. That's the danger of a sacred cow. I remember later when I got into the academic biz, there's a bunch of quirky, interesting things about the ivory tower I could talk about forever, and I do miss that world. It was spectacular. Here's one of them. You're not supposed to go up for tenure early, and if you do, a whole lot of people are going to tell you that you're not seasoned enough, you're not ready, yeah, and you're too young. Oh, says the guy that went up for tenure in 3 and became full in 6 and a dean in 7. I know that that's not normal. On the other hand, man, sacred cows, even if you choose, this is important, you ready? Even if you choose not to slay them and risk a lot of social capital, even if you do that, just seriously considering it as a professional, thinking about how to use your time, thinking about where to take risks or where not to take risks. That is a beautiful, valuable mental activity because it helps you think about what is and is not worth it as you try to move yourself, your team, and your organization forward. So at a minimum, you should always be playing the game as to where are those sacred cows, which ones should I care about, maybe even build an effort to go attack, whether it's me or a coalition of people that I build. There's tons at the individual, group, org level, even industry level. The question is, which one do you want to really bet on and choose to go and fight for? I got to tell you, I love that question so much. I think it's so central to successful leaders, so central to the success of your career, that I used to force MBA students. Matter of fact, I used to force MBA students to do a lot of funny things. I love my career, but man, I do miss teaching. So I've got to tell you, one of the things I used to do along the lines of understanding and really trying to engage sacred cows was a particular assignment that I'll never forget. Think about this now. I told students, they're all age 25 to 50 MBA students, right? I told all of them, I want you to go to work. I want you to look thoughtfully across the environment. I want you to identify the most clear sacred cows, those things we're doing that you aren't sure exactly why we're doing, or maybe you know why we're doing, but you also know they are not meaningfully productive. Hold on just a second. Let's check it here. Good, good, good. I want you to identify them, and then this is the ballsy part of it. Forgive my French. I want you to think about how you might go address it, fight it, change it, deal with it, because even though it's risky, and I fully admit that, I've already done it 3 times just today with you on this stream, it is part of understanding how you move forward yourself, the group, and the organization. So what happened over several years when I unleashed a bunch of MBAs to go, gave them permission. I'm not their boss, but I gave them permission to go look at their work environment, their job, their organization, and say, hey, where are those sacred cows? Let me tell you something. I have never been so humbled and so thrilled in my life. I had a lot of strange assignments. This is just one of them. The results blew my mind time and again. People who came back and said things like, yeah, I got in trouble. Some people looked at me funny. I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, that happened a lot. I'm not going to lie. That's part of the price of trying to be something better than average in life, period. That's just the way it is. But many more told me, you know what? People couldn't believe that we had waited so long to talk about this. My boss said, you know what, I've been thinking about that. I'm not sure why I haven't said anything. Thanks for speaking up. I actually remember several students. I'm going to give you kind of an amalgamation of 5 or 6 students who I recall who had this experience with sacred cows. They went out, they did the survey, they started looking for opportunities to improve. My favorite, I'll just give you the favorite. My favorite involved a person who was by training, if I recall, he was a type of engineer, I believe a mechanical engineer. He was looking for a new type of material. They make a product, whatever it might be, there's cost of materials. One of them was very costly, and he knew in an ideal world he would find a new material to replace the old one that had better properties he was looking for. In fact, if I remember, it had to do with products, industrial equipment that's used underwater in aquatic situations. Long story short. So he did something that was an absolute deal breaker historically in his organization. Do you know what he did? This sounds funny to some of you, I'm sure. But he knew that the divisional structure of his company was a sacred cow. So you've seen many organizations. Larger ones are organized in different ways. Many times they're divisions, big, complete, separate organizations, different P&Ls, different everything, maybe no shared services whatsoever, etc. In his organization, it was a sacred cow. You do not go mingling, collaborating, searching for answers, trying to be helpful across divisional lines. You don't do that. Why? Because we are competing. We are all really going after corporate for very limited corporate money. You've heard versions of this, I'm sure. And he said to himself, I know that's the precedent. I know that's the expectation from my boss. I also know those are interesting places that I respect, that I have yet to go search for answers to some of the conundrums I face every day. And this brave young manager started doing that. He ended up going to 3 separate divisions, asking them about various materials and their properties that they were using for different product types. And because, without massive effort, because he simply decided to look that sacred cow right in the face and make some barbecue, he went and he found a material. He found it because it was there to be found once you decided that walking into the other divisions was in fact not a massive problem. It was simply something we hadn't done before. We had good intentions, but really we had a bad outcome. He changed it and he went and found something that was lighter, stronger, conducted electricity, other things that he needed to be done better than the material he had been using. It saved his organization millions in the first year alone. He became a minor hero, at least for a period of time. He even got an email from his boss going, you know what? When I heard about you, I thought you were wacky. I heard about the assignment, didn't make sense to me. Then I saw practical reality when my employee went and did what he did. And I have to say to you, thank you. And I'm telling you, everyone watching me today, that is humbling and beautiful, and it darn near made me cry, because most of the things that make us better aren't actually terribly hard. They just make us stop doing some of the things that we've been doing that don't make a lot of sense. And that starts with a little honesty and self-reflection, a little introspection, a little then willingness to go say or do things that we normally don't do, and maybe sometimes think we're not supposed to do. That is what it means to slay, I mean, really barbecue a sacred cow. Let me give you one more example. I think this might be, frankly, the most famous example I've ever come across so far. It involves a person named Dick Fosbury. Have you ever heard of Dick Fosbury? It's an amazing story. You can Google this and read a lot more detail if you want to when we get off in just a little while. Listen, this man back in the day was a high jumper in high school. And he watched how everyone typically approached the high jump, and he saw that they went like this. Here, I'm gonna make stick figures. Ready? They went like this, and they jumped, just 2 legs over, so the torso stayed up, and the legs just went over the bar like that. And he said to himself, "I'm not sure that looks like it really meshes with the capabilities of the body. That doesn't intuitively make sense to me. I think I can imagine a different way." And so he tried a different way. And people started to make fun of him. And he didn't care. He kept at it. What he did was to run up, and instead of going like this over with the bar going through there, he went like this backwards and allowed his back to hit the bar, or almost hit the bar, and go over. A flop, if you will. And everyone said, "You look silly. That won't work. That's not the way we do things." His coach initially didn't support him either, and he could barely jump 5 feet high at the time. But somehow he had a little intestinal fortitude. He understood the logic that we've been talking about for the last few minutes. And so he stayed with it. I'm going to read you this. I think you're going to be amazed. He stayed with it. When he started, he couldn't compete. He jumped maybe 5 foot high using the standard technique. He tried his, and he slowly started getting better, more and more progress. Yeah, they made fun of him. In fact, reporters watched him in the air at track meets because he barely made the team, but he got to compete. Reporters watched him. They said, "It looks like he's having an aerial seizure," one guy said. Next person who wrote him and actually covered him, not because he was great at the time at all, but because he looked silly in the reporter's mind, said, "You know what? That looks to me not like a jump, but like a Fosbury flop." It sounded like ridicule. He thought he was being mean, and that label stuck with us to this very day. Slowly but surely, he improved. Soon enough, he set the school record for his high school. Dick eventually won multiple NCAA championships and Olympic gold in 1968 in Mexico City by jumping over 7 feet, 3 inches. Today, nearly all people in that sport use the technique that he was ridiculed for trying and for pioneering and for staying with the Fosbury flop. So let me end by saying thank you for joining me. Doesn't take too long if we're serious about it to get locked in, let our thoughts start, have a little fun and learn something. I hope we achieved that today. But when you put this all in context and you think about your career, you think about your life. Let me end where I began. Hey, what kind of person, what kind of professional do you want to be? Do you want to just be a steward of the status quo? There's something to be respected there. Or do you want to be something much more? Maybe it's time to identify a few sacred cows, because you know what? Sacred cows do make great barbecue. Thanks. See you next time.